Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us at this another interview of Magnifying Your Impact. I'm with a lady called Lesley Everett today, who I hold in enormously high esteem for a number of different reasons. One is the way in which she lives her life and the values that she bestows, and the way in which that she gives of her heart to so many hundreds of us in our profession. She's a great friend, great heart, and when people are looking for advice or guidance with regards to their leadership, their brand, how they're presenting themselves globally as a business, as an individual, Lesley's incredibly sought after, not just from international media. She's been interviewed countless, I don't know how many times, on television, radio globally. She's spoken in 5 different continents. She was president of the Global Speakers Federation worldwide, spoken in countless different countries around the world. I can go on, but she's a lovely lady and somebody who really has great clarity as to how she helps us all. So thank you so much for spending the time with us today, Lesley, from California. Even though I'm sitting here in the middle of the rainy England when it's meant to be our summer, so don't mention what the weather's like in California at the moment. I don't want to know. But what I would love to know is just give us a couple of minutes about your background, where you came from and what you've achieved and where you are in the business today.
Thanks, Craig, and thanks so much for interviewing me. It's an absolute pleasure to be interviewed by somebody who I equally hold in very high esteem. So thank you, you're a dear friend and an amazing philanthropist and everything that you do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, where did I come from? Well, I think I was a small town girl in a tiny Suffolk village. Always had an ambition of travel, which is so really I blew out of the ballpark, I guess, eventually, but didn't know how. But I started my career as in the UK in law and criminal justice, and started to train in that respect. Realised that I probably wasn't going to make the best lawyer in the world, and went into technology and IT and installed computer systems within police and magistrates courts. And then I eventually went into corporate life, and I'd been doing a lot of study for things that really interested me, just part-time, in terms of behaviors and how we project ourselves, non-verbal communication, physiology. I even did like beauty therapy, aromatherapy, just stuff that I was interested in. And when I was in corporate life, I realized that there were a lot of people around me who weren't getting the advantages or the exposure or the promotion they deserved because they weren't projecting themselves in the best authentic way. And it was then I realized that I wanted to do something different, and I left and developed a methodology to help coach people to be authentic and build their brand. And that's evolved an awful lot since then. So that was over a period of time. And then, of course, moved out to the US with the walking tool company that I built and the brand that I built. Came out here with my husband and son in 2014. So that's a sort of a very brief summary of where I've come from.
I think throughout your introduction, as you were talking, there's so much that you gave us a couple of minutes there. There's so much more. And normally I like to stay in the present and look at the future, because I think everybody listening to that would really appreciate that part of your vision as to where we're going or where we are now. But just to look a little bit more about your past, and I want to start from a marketing perspective, a PR perspective, and how you built your brand, because that's where your speaking started, and that's what's made you so successful globally in your speaking. So what do you think made you successful from a brand perspective? What did you do to help you stand out in your business and become a global speaker?
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly not something I planned. And I've learned through my experiences now that I can develop a methodology to help others do that in a much more streamlined, effective way than I did. So it was a very odd personal branding story for me, having gone through those different careers. But I think what I did was I always hung on to what my passions were as a child. And one of those I already mentioned was travel and different cultures and learning about different parts of the world. And in fact, I was just we just had a container arrived over from the UK with a lot of sentimental stuff in it. And I was looking back through the jobs folder that I had when I was younger and applied for jobs. And most of them were with travel related companies. And I always wanted to be an air stewardess. And I was looking at one of the letters that had all this criteria that you needed. And I was about 16 at the time, way too young, of course. I was ticking all the boxes that needed. And it was all great, good level of English, good education.
Yes.
And then the height requirement was 5'4", and I'm only 5'1.5". So it was a major stumbling block for me back then. But I think, going back to that, it was travel and just learning was really, really important to me. So I sort of brought that in, I guess, into the way I developed. And when I developed Walking Tall, I wrote the book fairly early on after I developed this methodology. And I didn't have a title for the book, but McGraw-Hill, who I had a contract with, kept pushing me for this title. And I had to do some deep diving into my personal history and think about what are the common threads for me that will give me a title that's meaningful. And this is a technique I use in my programs now, actually, strangely enough. And I remember thinking back to my school days as a child and being a lot smaller than the other kids at school. And I hated it because I wasn't very visible. And I sort of always tried to find ways of standing out from the crowd. And we had a system in our school called the school colours. And it meant that if you achieved in music and sport, you got your school colours. And for us, it was a coloured tie and a uniform and a badge. So I did all the music I could. I got chosen for most of the sports teams, except one that was netball because I was too short. And it really bugged me that I couldn't get this school colours because I was too short. And I used to run off to the changing room every Wednesday morning and look at the team, and I was never chosen until a time when they had a flu epidemic that swept the school one spring, and they were desperate. So they had to choose me, and I got the school colours. And I was sort of thinking back through some of these things when I tried to come up with the brand and the book title, and Walking Tall just came to me. So being only 5'1.5", but always wanted to stand out from the crowd. So right from an early stage, the brand that I developed with Walking Tall was very much part of me. It wasn't just something I plucked out of thin air. It meant something to me. And then I rebranded the whole company once the book was really successful. And that's one thing that's really been very successful with the brand, is that people remember the Walking Tall brand is associated with the giraffe, and people remember the giraffe and call me the giraffe lady, strangely enough.
Looking at that then, what do you think are the 3 things that are most important from a brand perspective that will make us successful, be it in the charity world, with social enterprises, with a commercial company, with all the people that you've coached and all the companies that you've worked for, all the conferences that you've spoken at? What are the 3 things that you think have made you most successful from a brand perspective?
I think the most important thing is that with my work, I deal with individuals to develop their own personal brand or leadership brand, or small entrepreneurs, startups, company owners, and also with big corporates where they have a set of values that they want to live and breathe through their people. And really the 3 things would apply to both. And the first one would be to really focus and zone in on what you're really good at, your expertise. What is it that you really truly want to be known for because you're great at it? And really define and articulate that, and just drive it home as much as you possibly can so that you're well known for that piece of expertise. Secondly, being authentic. And I think this is, we've talked about this for years, but right now people, consumers, clients want to know what's behind the brand. It's no longer good enough to have a logo that takes you through. They want to know what the values are of the CEO and the C-suite and the people they're dealing with. They want to see this human dimension of a business. So authenticity and humility to a degree is really important in my view, in getting that personality piece right. And then thirdly, consistency. Because it's no good being all over the place, trying to be everybody to everything to everybody, and also not keeping, being consistent with the values, with the behaviors that you personally project, or what your teams project, what you project as a company. So I would say that defining expertise, authenticity, and consistency would be the 3 key elements of branding today.
It might be one and the same thing, but when you work with these organizations, what do you think is most important when we're looking to create a winning culture? Because again, where we are right now in the coronavirus pandemic, there are particularly charity leaders and CEOs of social enterprises listening to this, that might have just inherited a team where the culture they believe isn't right, or it's even broken, or they're looking to build a team from scratch. So what values or what do they need to think about from a leadership perspective when they're wanting to create a really strong culture out of these very difficult times?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it absolutely comes down to companies focusing on the quality and effectiveness of their leaders, their leadership and succession. So that's obviously a massive subject, but really I don't think enough emphasis is put on leadership development. And right now that's crucial. We're also seeing a lot of like accidental leadership where people are having to move into roles quicker that are more senior and broader than they're ready for. And they're not getting necessarily the support and the training and the coaching that they need in order to be effective. So we create a real gap in the quality of leadership, and that's dangerous for a company. So first off, a company should be looking at really making the leadership as robust and as effective and as authentic as possible. But I think as a leader individually, there are two things, and one of them is collaboration. I'm seeing a lot of lack of collaboration in teams right now. And what I mean by that, it's not just the working together, it's the understanding of your team, who has the skills in what area, making sure that we understand that people see things differently. Everybody has a different personality type. Everybody has a different brand. And we need to be clear about what those are and what the strengths of everybody is to collaborate effectively. And the other area is, I mentioned it before, is humility. Is that I've said for years that just being humble, not being right all the time, being able to listen to people, being able to admit when you're wrong or you've messed up. I think these are the things that add to authenticity, and that if you're a new leader in a role and you're trying to build a team and take that team with you, it's an essential ingredient to being able to manage effectively and inspire and lead people to take them with you.
So talk to me more about collaboration, because that really struck something in me, because right now, and I keep coming back to the present moment because it is where we are, and globally there's massive challenge around it, is that I'm generalizing, Lesley, but of course in the West we sometimes have lost our sense of community or collaboration, right? And we don't know who the next door neighbor is. And we don't know who the lady is who's sitting 5 desks down from us in our office. At least we don't know what him or her, their children do when their birthdays are. Often we've lost that sense, haven't we? Or I'm generalizing, some cultures are wonderful with it, but a lot of us have lost it. So talk to me more about collaboration and a sense of community in these companies, because I think you've hit the nail on the head, is that right now that's what's going to stand companies away from the rest, isn't it? Is that they've got a really strong community and they've got each other's backs and they're really looking after each other. So my question is, how do we, when we've got an okay sense of collaboration and in some areas we have humility, when we're in that place where we want to go much deeper, how do we as a leader make sure we go deeper into a sense of collaboration and humility and connection? How can we do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I really do think it's super important right now. And as you said, right now in the world that we're in, I think it's more important than ever. And I think it's being able to bring about that all of us should have an acceptance that culture and diverse cultures are what we need in this world to be able to live in an environment and work in an environment that we're happy in. I believe everybody strives for that, and having a rich environment that we can thrive in. We're all striving for the same thing. So this whole diversity agenda is really important to make sure that people don't just tick the boxes, that actually understand what that means. Now, I don't teach and coach on diversity per se, but what I do is help people to really have the confidence to delve into what they're really good at, and then be able to package that and project it out there consistently and build profile and exposure with it. And I think when you're building a team now, it's really important that we spend time on being able to dive deep into what people's uniqueness is, what their differentiation is, no matter what level they're at in the business. Everybody has an important part to play. And if we can really get to the depths of that and what they bring to make them great at that job, define it, share it, collaborate with it, then we've got a very healthy team. And rather than saying, oh, she can't do that because her job is this, or she's got that background, or he can't do that, his skills have never been in that area. Well, why not? Let's just delve in and just see what people are really good at.
My sense, Lesley, is that, the last 10, 15 years, at least in England, what I've seen is that we were rushing. Everything's like, we've got to grow so fast and we've got to do this and we've got to keep on the treadmill. And perhaps now, even though we have to grow and we have to become sustainable, it's about people even more than it ever was, isn't it? It's about knowing the lady or gentleman that's sitting in front of you and, like you say, going much, much deeper, understand the person rather than their job.
Yes, it is. And, when I'm coaching people, especially, entrepreneurs and things, is like being able to reach out to your clients on a more personal level than perhaps you've ever done before, because that builds this sense of trust and community, as you said. And I think within the situation we're all in right now with COVID-19 is we have an opportunity to reach out to people in a way that we haven't done before. And we really haven't done before, but we never have. It's never felt right. We've never had time,
No,
reach out to people just to see how they are, giving that little dimension of you. And it reminds me of Malcolm Gladwell's book called Blink, when he did a study of medical consultants in the US and looked at the ratio of complaints against competency amongst these medical doctors. And they found there was no correlation at all. In fact, the ones that got the best reviews and the best loyalty were often the least competent. But it was those people that took that 2 minutes at the end of every consultation to close down the book, the notes, and say, so tell me about you. How are you?
Yeah, how are you?
Your life?
Yeah.
What's great at the moment?
Yeah,
what have you done
absolutely
celebrated?
To go wider, and I'm fascinated particularly in your answer to this because of how you've traveled and where you've spoken and what you see, is that what do you see as the biggest problem we have right now on the planet? And how do you think we should manage it or solve it? I know there's many different problems and challenges that we have, but what, even for your son or for all of us around, culturally or environmentally, what do you think is or values, from a values perspective? I don't know. What's the biggest challenge? And how do we manage or solve it?
Yeah, it's a massive question, isn't it? I think it has to go back to a little bit of what I've said, and this not only understanding, but total acceptance and activity towards the bringing in the richness and diversity of cultures. And, it makes me so sad right now where we seem to be going to an extreme of obliterating some culture because it's not, doesn't seem like the right thing to do. I think we've got to be really careful not to obliterate it, but actually to embrace the richness of cultures and the different way of doing things and the different viewpoints. Secondly, when I look at my son, who's now 27, he doesn't understand why there should be any different treatment of any different people coming from different cultures. He just doesn't understand it. And I'm sure your kids are the same. They just don't get this. So, bringing that mentality, I don't think he's alone with that, but bringing that mentality to the fore to say that everybody's equal, everybody can bring something. And actually, let's really embrace the differences of cultures in this world and use them to that end result of a much better environment. And that seems to me, sadly, like it's slipping away and we're losing that. And yet we live on a planet that's full of richness of culture and diversity. And we're losing it. I don't know what the answer is to make that happen, but maybe it's from the generations coming through, listening to them more, understanding how they think, because,
Yeah. Well, I think you've answered it earlier. I think it's acceptance and authenticity and humility, isn't it? That's a good start.
Yeah.
That's a great start, isn't it? From how you've answered that. And, we both have looked at this over many years, and I'm a huge believer in who we spend our time with is really impacts who we are. Who have been the people that have really inspired you to get to where you are today? When you were honoured with, the president of Speakers Global Federation and looking after so many hundreds of speakers around the world and advising them and helping us grow our businesses, you've met thousands of people. Can you think about 2 or 3 people that you think in the business, but outside, just in your life, that have inspired you the most? And most importantly in this question, what has it been? What are the 2 or 3 things that they've done or said that have really changed your path and created success for you?
Whenever I'm asked a question like this, I feel like you said, there's so much, and I always find it very difficult to really scale it down to specifics, to specific people and things that they've said. I honestly do believe it's a collection of things that are built on over the years.
Yes.
Like somebody says something and then someone else builds on that and gives you another perspective. When I've been to conferences around the world, and often you'll find this, I'm sure, that it's not what's said by the speaker at the time, but it's something that makes me think of, that comes out from kind of left side, as it were,
right,
to bring into that and makes me think differently. But I go back to my early days when I talked about wanting to travel. And I guess then I didn't know, but I guess working for myself was really what I wanted to do, but I didn't know. And it was my late cousin-in-law who had a travel business in Yorkshire in the UK, very successful travel business doing corporate travel. And he had a team of about 25 people. And I remember being in awe of not only what he did for companies and his rich knowledge of the world and travel, but the person he was and how he managed those people and how he was humble in himself. They had no ego. He used to manage people with the utmost respect. And I learned an awful lot from that. Going into his business, he let me come into the business and watch what was going on. And I learned an awful lot about the basics of leadership, the basics of being driven to achieve what you want to do, as well as the topic area of travel. But it was his treatment of people that I think inspired me a lot. And if I look through my life now, the people that have inspired me most are the ones that are genuine, consistent, kind to people. Okay, there's a lot of ego in the speaker world, but it doesn't mean that you have to necessarily not have the compassion for other people as well. And where I see that personified, that really has the biggest amount of impact on me, wanting to be more like that. Don't make it about me. That's what often speaking gives you. And I think trying to get away from that and make it about other people is huge. I take a lot from different people, but he was my early influence.
Many people, again, listening to this are in the world of trying to make money, trying to fundraise for their projects, trying to, grow their businesses or grow their charity and ask people for money or build projects where they can get people to invest and grow and develop financially as well as emotionally. Talk to me about money, because when you're talking to a sales team or when you talk to a charity or people want to fundraise, what's your advice how do you get people from scarcity to abundance? What's important when people are starting their careers or in a situation where they've been given a fundraising role? What's your advice about them thinking big and being abundant in their thinking so they make more money? Because you've always delivered, to me, you've always delivered tremendous value. You've always known your value. In other words, you've always stood on a stage, metaphorically and physically, and said, this is who I am. This is absolutely the amount of money that, I deliver this. And you over deliver, you under promise and over deliver, but you absolutely know who you are and you see value in yourself. So just give us some advice as to how to make more money.
Oh, yeah, tough one. I think it's, I've never been driven by money or that end result. I've been driven by what am I doing at this particular time that is making a difference? So sounds odd, but it's about being in the moment at the time, doing the best you can possibly do for people that you're delivering to and people around you, and almost like letting go of the end result. So
Yeah.
a lot of
Okay.
people, I think, are focused on, business plans. You're focused on the end result,
Yeah.
the end
Yeah.
result all the time. You're driving towards that, which means that you're not necessarily focused as you should be on that moment and what you're doing right now and what you're giving to those people around you right now. So, don't get me wrong. I don't believe I've been. I've still got a long way to go. I want to
Yeah.
be more
Sure.
successful.
Sure.
But it's not about the money. It's about feeling like I'm doing the best I can at that moment in time for me, for my family, for the people around me, and letting go of the end result so I can be with what I'm doing. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I would best describe it.
Yes, it absolutely makes sense to me. Is that it's service leadership, isn't it? It's contributing. It's making sure that you're doing the very best that you can for yourself and your family and the people around you, and focusing on quality, isn't it? Is that
It is,
that
yeah,
right?
it is. And I think, when I'm coaching people, of course, when I'm, at the end result for anybody I'm coaching, whether it's C-suite, a business, whether it's an individual company or an individual, the end result is being better at what I do. Maybe some people earn more money and what have you. So it's really important to get to the basis, the roots of what makes you tick. What's your personal objective in all of this? And I work really hard with individuals to get to that point at which, what is it that you want to achieve? What is your objective? What's the timeline on it? And what does it actually give you at the end of it? What does it give? It's not about being a better leader or a better parent, but what does that give you? How does that make you feel? And if you can get people, sometimes it takes a long time to get to that part with people, but if you can get to that piece, when people say, yeah, if I achieve this, really does this for me and makes this difference to me in my life, that's a compelling driver for them to be as successful as they can be. And if that's to earn more money, then that's their drive, and that's great.
You mentioned compelling drive. You talk to me about fear, because I think when I've watched you work, and when I was been in mastermind groups with you, we've talked, and we've been at events before together, and you've written books, which is, it's an interesting one for me, definitely, because I've procrastinated throughout my career because I always want it to be better than the number one book, and so I just end up not writing it. And so I'm interested in your psychology here, because when things get tough for you, Lesley, because they get tough for all of us in life, when you've had difficult moments in your life, what do you say to yourself, or what do you do as a ritual or a daily ritual to say to yourself, come on, Lesley, you can do this? If you're up against it and you're having a really hard day or a hard month, or somebody, and we've all had difficulties in people passing away and different things that happen in our lives, where you've been in really difficult situations. And, I don't like this word, but it's right in this context, because you have so much love in you, but you're a fighter, you're a winner, you're a survivor, and you don't give up. And so talk to me about, is it something that you say when it gets difficult to yourself, or is it something that you do, or is it something else?
Great question. So I'm a very positive person. I don't like negativity. I find it very difficult to deal with negativity. That's not always a good thing, of course. But I always, you may have heard me say this before, Craig, but I often look at my past life through a glass wall. And what I mean is that I can see it. It's glass. So I can look back on mistakes I've made or things I've done that I can learn from. But it's a wall. It's a solid wall, and I can't go back. So I don't keep going back over and over. I should have done this, should have done that. I don't live a life of regret. I really don't do that. So I'm always looking forward and positive. So I'm very persistent, very resilient. And even we're all going through tough times right now, and nobody knows, quite how we're going to come out of this. But I'm still positive. I know that I haven't been given a problem, a challenge here that I don't have the tools to get through, or we don't have the tools in the business to get through. So I will just keep going and working out, tweaking it every day, what it is that we need to do differently. I'm never static. I don't just sit still and wait for something to happen. So
let me take an even step further behind that. Do you know, because listening to you, it seems like it's natural, right? That you're just positive and you just do things. But some of us, obviously you've got that, and have you built that? Is it natural that you've always been positive and you don't like negativity? So my next question is this, is there a way that you have created that in your head when it gets difficult? You are positive and you know that you've got the tools, you just have to find them. What's created that confidence in you? Is it something that you've said when you were a kid? Is it something that your parents gave you? Is it something that you learned from somebody else? Is it something that you just said, I'm on this planet once and I'm going to bloody do this?
It's something that and Chris, my husband, who's a very different personality type to me, is an engineer, software engineer, is very structured, very logical, and often I can fall into the trap of calling him negative. And he said, I'm not negative, I'm just realistic. I want to know all the barriers that could get in the way of me achieving my end result. So I'm actually positive. I want to see. So he's given me a good perspective on that. I think growing up, my parents always supported me. I've been called stubborn, of course. That's the negative side of being so driven, and I get my teeth into something and I don't let go. And another thing Chris will often say to me, when do you let go? When do you get to a point where you let go? And I don't think I do. I would think I keep striving forward to find the next thing or the next change we can make. So it's very much ingrained in me. But I think my parents growing up, and they were incredibly supportive, but I think they often used to be very like, well, why do you need to change the status quo? You've got a great job. Why do you need to move from home and go to London? You've got a really good job. Why do you want to go into corporate sector when you've been in private sector? And why do you want to move to America and things like that? So that's probably driven me to a degree. Made me look at, I could stay in this small town and be happy. Yes, but that would have worked for me. So I think that's driven me to a degree.
As you've got the balance, I know that you have to have the balance between having a rest at some point, but it's a real, do you know what that rest, Lesley? But it's amazing because you've done so much and created so much for so many people. I was just interested in, I've got two more questions for you really, which I'm really excited to ask you because this is something that you've had so much of in your life, which is experience. You've traveled to, I don't know how many countries. You said you've spoken in 28 countries, 5 continents, but you've been with so many different audiences, so many different cultures. I asked you earlier about who are the 2 or 3 people that have had real big impact on you, but what do you think are the 2 or 3 experiences that you've had in life that have shaped you to become who you are today? Has it been speaking at a huge global conference, or is it something said to you, or is it traveling or going to safari, or whatever it is? What do you think of the 2 or 3, or maybe it's a really hard experience and a horrible one, but what do you think of the 2 or 3 experiences that have really shaped you most?
Okay, I mean, there's many, of course, and
my
son, as you know, as a parent, that teaches you more than you could ever even dream of. But and there's been many things, marrying Chris and learning from him. But coming to first off, there's 2 things I could pinpoint that have really taught me so much, and I've struggled with at times as well. So I've been out of my comfort zone for sure. One is the move to the US. Now, me being positive, you remember I wanted to do this way back from probably applied for the green card then. I met Chris in the middle of that, and we brought him in on that, which was great. I was just, oh, great, I love California. Every time I go, I feel a connection to it, want to do it. So I was very naive in terms of kind of what I needed to do. Anyway, we got the green card, moved over here. It's a complete challenge because I had to start the business really from scratch again, thinking that I could just extend it and, start to build the clients over here. But it was really starting again because a different country, even though we think we have a similar culture, we don't. And it's very different. Massive learning curve. And it has been in so many respects. Great positive things, negative things, resilience. Yes. Worry, waking up in the middle of the night, that kind of thing. But it teaches you stuff and it makes you strong, as well as a wonderful experience of that. So that's had a massive impact. And the other one was really the GSF presidency role, because I took that because I thought, well, I can. And people are saying, go for that. I wasn't really sure how I was whether I could do it effectively or not. But I put myself out of my comfort zone. And I think when I put myself out of my comfort zone, that's when I learn the most, as a lot of us do. So I did apply for that, and as you know, I got elected to president there. But I learned so much about leadership in that role and about cultures that I could never have even imagined. So for a start, we had like 15 countries that were members of the federation. So although we didn't govern over them, we helped to share best practice and act as a federation that helps support new country speak associations. So across those 15 countries, we had obviously lots of different cultures with leaders in each of those countries. So we'd have board meetings that went across, 10 different time zones or something like that. So coordinating that. You're also dealing with professional speakers. So everybody wanted to have a say. You're also dealing with volunteers. So you've got that as well. And as you well know, it's very different managing a team of people to managing a team of volunteers. There's different dynamics. And I learned so much about, I can't just go with my opinions here. I have to take into account all these different cultures and opinions and beliefs. And I've got to sit back and I've got to take it all on board. And then we've got to work out the best way to go. So collaboration lessons there were huge. So I think those two experiences have had the biggest amount of impact on me personally and growth in my life and appreciating other people and coming back to that piece about collaboration, I think.
I didn't realize that until you said it a minute ago, that was a really courageous move, because I guess that even though you've had associates and you've hired people in your speaking business, and obviously dealt with so many different agencies around the world, and event planners around the world, you went from running your own business in essence to taking on a presidency role of a global federation of a number of different organizations all under that one banner. That one must have been one enormous learning curve. Yeah, absolutely. I can really see that.
It was wonderful,
wonderful experience. And so, Lesley, if there was one piece of advice when you look at our planet and when you look at the human race, even if I go to a macro perspective, or indeed if you were to answer this how you like, either from a planetary perspective or from giving some advice to a CEO who's just taking on a charity or social enterprise and really wants to be successful, however you want to answer the question, this is it. What is your biggest piece of advice as we sit here in 2020 when we're looking to grow and develop an organization or live a successful life? What's the one thing that sits in your heart that you feel is most important for all of us right now?
It's very difficult to remove yourself from a very busy corporate life sometimes, especially when we're going through challenging times. And I would say the biggest piece of advice is to step back and breathe true to yourself. Understand what really, truly motivates you and drives you. Not what you think truly motivates and drives you, what really does. And that takes some effort, to take some time out to really look at that. And if you're really going to make a difference in the world and leave that legacy, you're not going to do that unless you're doing something that you're truly passionate about, that comes from the soul, the inner you, that really makes you happy every time you do something with that. So I think taking time out, really looking at, I guess it's coming back to that leadership brand, that authentic core again of who you really are as a person, what drives you at this point in your life, in your career, being able to encapsulate that and use that to drive forward to the next stage, leave that legacy, leave that company, whatever it might be, but being true to yourself, not trying to be somebody you're not. There's too much of that going on in the world right now.
We've talked about time, and I completely see that, because finding out who we really, really are is, for me, the absolute journey of life. Can we do this in a year? Is your experience that people can do it in a month? Does it take experience? Can an 18-year-old really know who they truly, truly are? Can a 15-year-old, does it have to be an adult? What's your experience from your journey as to when you feel that you've landed in your soul and when did that happen to you? And how long does this take?
You don't reach the destination with it. It's an ongoing evolution, a journey. So who I was, I don't know about you, but who I was at 18 is not who I am at 57.
No, absolutely.
It's different. So, and absolutely, it can be. I've just worked with a young person in their early 20s just this week to help them delve into, what are their real strengths and skills now, what really makes them tick. And that can be really rewarding, because at that age, they haven't really thought about that too much. They're always striving for the next big thing. It's really grounding, but that'll evolve over the next couple of years. And obviously, I've worked with very senior, very experienced CEOs. So it depends. It can take, I've worked with people through, I'd say 3 or 4 months. You can actually delve into all the aspects that allow you to really understand yourself as much as you possibly can. And then it's a matter of building that, packaging it, getting it out there, being consistent, living and breathing it all the time. So that's the ongoing journey piece. And then the real person obviously evolves over that time as well. And we should be open to that evolution. We shouldn't feel like we need to stick to who we are. And we get to a point in our lives where we kind of say, yeah, this is me. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to mix with people that don't make me feel give me the right energy.
Absolutely.
And we start to build on that. And our intuition, we realize, is actually very strong. We push it away a lot. We make excuses and have all sorts of logical reasons why we shouldn't do that, because it's just intuition. But as we get older, we realize that intuition is incredibly powerful. So it's listening to that as well. So any age. It can, it's 3 or 4 months, you can actually get a real deep sense of who you are, and then start to articulate and package it. It's different for everybody.
I don't think I really knew who I was until I was 29. And, so there's moments, isn't there? And then you develop it and you understand much more about not just your archetype, but, who you really are at the very deepest level. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's been great talking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
I don't think we've had such a deep conversation before, Craig.
I know. It's been great.
That's been fun.
Really great. Thank you so much for your time.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.